Hi, Mr. Hill.
Hello.
I made this appointment with you today because I own a huge house up on Montford Avenue, and I was thinking about turning it into a bed and breakfast. I have all of my funding in place, and I've done a ton of work on the building. But after talking with the bank people yesterday, they asked me about zoning. Now, I assumed that zoning wouldn't be a problem, but after discussing it with my husband last night, we both decided that I probably should get some legal advice.
Getting legal advice is always a good idea. You say you want to open a bed and breakfast. Let me just make sure we're both talking about the same thing. You'd be running this business out of your current home. Would you still be living in it?
Yes, we fixed up the basement, and that's where we'll be living from now, and the guests will stay in the 4 rooms upstairs. There's 2 on the main level and another 2 on the top level.
Do you know what the current zoning classification for that area is?
Ooh, Mr. Hill, I have no idea. But there's a lot of huge houses on Montford Avenue. And you know what? There is another historic section of town, probably about a half a mile away, and there's a ton of bed and breakfasts there.
Any on the street where you plan to have yours?
No, we'd be the first.
Okay, let me just check something on the computer. I see. From the address you gave my secretary, I see that that part of Montford Avenue is zoned residential. That's going to be a problem.
Does that mean we can't open our business?
Not necessarily. It just means that we may have to go before the board and ask for a variance.
A variance? What's that?
Well, you know that different parts of town are classified in different ways. Residential, commercial, industrial.
Yes, residential means only houses are allowed there. Commercial means only businesses, and industrial sounds pretty self-explanatory.
True. There are actually several sub-classifications to the zoning regulations. For instance, under residential, there are some areas that are limited to single-family homes, while others are combined with apartments. I see that your part of Montford Avenue has this dual classification.
That's true. There are some apartment buildings just up the street.
Okay. What we can do is go before the board and ask for a variance. A variance is basically an exception to the zoning classification. You see these things all the time. You might see a bookstore at the end of a residential street, or a ice cream shop, things like that.
Actually, there is a small set of shops at the other end of Montford Avenue.
There you go. Others have applied for and been granted a variance.
These places are pretty old. Someone once told me that these shops have been there for more than 50 years.
Well, that could be something different. I don't know when the zoning regulations were enacted, but if the shops were there before the regulations, then they'd be classified as non-conforming use. That's what they call a structure that doesn't fit in with the current zoning classifications, but predated their enactment.
My house is over 100 years old. Does that help?
No, not really. If your house were a 100-year-old bed and breakfast, then we wouldn't have any problems. But since it's been a residence up to this point, it won't qualify as non-conforming use.
Well, Mr. Hill, aren't there some deals where the city encourages businesses to move in? I mean, couldn't I come in under one of those?
What you're talking about is a conditional use permit, and that's when the local government encourages specific types of businesses to move into an area. You see that a lot with dry cleaners and grocery stores and businesses like that. The government encourages these businesses to be put into residential areas to cut down on traffic flow and congestion. However, I'm not aware of any initiatives the city is pushing to encourage bed and breakfasts.
Well, it sounds more and more like a variance is the way to go. So is it hard to get one?
It depends. We'd have to make the case to the board that a B&B won't unduly impact traffic flow, and that having a substantially improved business at the end of the street would help the tax base. The board may even decide, based on our petition, that it likes the idea of encouraging other B&B owners to relocate to Montford. Who knows? It could be the start of a whole new trend.
Trends are nice and everything, but all I really want to do is open up my business.